Welcome to 21st Sports Recap and Reaction for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the New Orleans Saints in their Week 2 matchup, September 20th, 2015. We're going to go over every possession and the stats and give our breakdown and analysis. So to start off this game, the Saints got the ball first, and they would end up punting the ball after 8 plays, having gone 45 yards. So now the Buccaneers would take over, and they would punt the ball back to the Saints after going 49 yards in 7 plays. So now the Saints would pick up a first down, but then they would end up losing 5 yards overall after 4 plays and punting the ball to the Buccaneers. So now the Buccaneers got the ball, and they would end up kicking a field goal to put the first points on the scoreboard in this game, as Kyle Brinza hit a 55-yarder to make it 3-0 Buccaneers over the Saints with about a minute left in the first quarter. So now the Saints would get the ball after the field goal. They start off on their own 20, and they would bring the first quarter to a close. They would end up picking up a first down, but after 6 plays, they would end up punting the ball from their own 28. So now the Buccaneers would take over, but they went 3 and out and punted it back to the Saints. The Saints would punt it back to the Buccaneers after 5 plays and only going 9 yards. And now the Bucks would take over on their own 46. They got into New Orleans territory, and they would bring the ball down to the New Orleans 34, but Brinza missed a 52-yard field goal, and so it remained 3-0 with Tampa still in the lead. So now after the missed field goal, New Orleans would take over on their own 42, and they went 58 yards in 7 plays, capped off by their first points of the game, an 11-yard touchdown run by Mark Ingram, and the extra point by Hawker made it 7-3 New Orleans over Tampa Bay. So it was a 4-point lead for the Saints at this point, and now the Buccaneers would end up going 63 yards in 6 plays and score a touchdown of their own, as Jameis Winston hit Vincent Jackson for a 15-yard touchdown pass, and the extra point was good by Brinza with just 12 seconds left before halftime, as the Buccaneers took back the lead by 3 with the score Tampa Bay 10, New Orleans 7. So that was the score at halftime, and coming out of the half, the first possession of the second half, the Buccaneers went 80 yards in just 4 plays, as Jameis Winston would end up taking it in himself from a yard out to score a touchdown, and with the extra point, it was now 17-7 Buccaneers over the Saints. Actually, Winston hit Vincent Jackson for a 22-yard pass on that possession. Also, Doug Martin had a 14-yard run as well. And then the Saints took over on their own 18 after that touchdown, trailing by 10 in the third quarter. They did pick up a first down, and they would bring the ball up to the 32. It was 2nd and 8, and Drew Brees was intercepted by Alteron Werner. So Alteron Werner got the ball back for the Buccaneers. So now the Buccaneers would take over on the New Orleans 48. They would end up going 31 yards in 10 plays, eating up 5 minutes plus of game clock. And Kyle Brinza would end up kicking a 35-yard field goal with about 6 minutes left in the third to make it 20-7 as the Buccaneers extended their lead to 13. So now the Saints would take over on their own 20. And then after getting a first down with a 12-yard run on first down to make it a first down at the 32, they then ended up being faced with a 3rd and 2 on their own 40, and Drew Brees hit Willie Snead for an 8-yard pass, but Snead fumbled it, and DJ Swearinger recovered, and so now the Buccaneers would take over as they had the ball on their own 40, and they would go 57 yards in 5 plays, and Brinza kicked a 22-yard field goal, and that made it 23-7 Buccaneers over the Saints, as they now extended their lead to 16. So now the Saints would take over on their own 20. They went 80 yards and all the way down into the red zone, and Austin Johnson punched it in from a yard out. They went for 2, but they failed on the 2-point conversion, and so it would remain a 10-point game with the score Tampa Bay 23, New Orleans 13. So now the Buccaneers would take over on their own 20 after the touchdown by the Saints, and then they ended up being faced with a 3rd and 3, and Jameis Winston was sacked by Kikaha, and then the fumble, and it was recovered by Kasim Edebali, and so it was a fumble recovery after the sack, and the Saints now had the ball on the Tampa Bay 25, but they failed to move it as they only gained a yard, and out would come Zach Hocker to attempt a 42-yard field goal, but he missed it wide left, and so now the Bucks would take over on their own 32 after the missed field goal, and then Muscle Hamster fumbled the ball, and so the Saints got it right back on the Tampa Bay 30, and it didn't take them long to score as they first gained 14 yards with a run by Robinson, and then Willie Snead made up for his mistake. The 16-yard touchdown pass from Brees to Snead made it a 4-point game after the extra point was missed. It was now 23-19 with the Bucks still in the lead. So now Tampa Bay would take over after the touchdown on their own 20, but after 8 plays, they would end up punting the ball from their own 37, having only gained 37 yards on the possession. So now the Saints would take over after the punt on their own 24, and Brees ended up with an incomplete pass, but a penalty against the Bucks would give the Saints a first down on the 39, a 15-yard penalty. And so now Mark Ingram would get the ball from Brees, and he lost 6 yards, and he coughed it up. He fumbled the ball, and Henry Melton would end up recovering it for Tampa Bay. So now the Buccaneers would take over on the New Orleans 33 as they were within field goal range. They got down inside the red zone, but their drive stalled on the 12, and out would come Kyle Brinza to attempt a 30-yard field goal. It was up, it was good, and he extended the lead of the Buccaneers back to 7 points with the score 26-19, Tampa over New Orleans. So now the Saints would get another chance as they now had the ball on their own 20-yard line with less than 2 minutes left to play. So less than 2 minutes left. They had it on the 20, and they would end up picking up a first down, getting it out to the 33. But then they ended up getting a penalty, moved them back to the 23. And then they ended up with a 21-yard catch by Brandon Cooks that would end up bringing them out to the 40 after they had lost a few yards on a sack the play before as Jakees Smith sacked Brees. But then that was followed by the 21-yard reception by Cooks, and then a 10-yard reception by Colston. So now it's 1st and 10 at the 50, so they're right at midfield at this point. Drew Brees was then sacked for the second time by Jakees Smith on this possession. He dropped him for 20 yards. Brees fumbled it, but Conti recovered the fumble. So it's still Saints ball, but right now they had it on the Tampa Bay 45, and they were faced then with a 2nd and 5 on the next play after an incomplete pass. And it was 2nd and 5 on the 45, and Drew Brees hit Brandon Cooks for an 18-yard reception. So the Bucks took their last time out, and now it was 1st down and 10 on the Tampa Bay 27, down by 7. And the Saints then threw an incomplete pass as Drew Brees missed his target as he was looking for Coleman. And now on 2nd down, with time nearly running out, as there was just a few seconds on the game clock, Drew Brees dropped back to pass, and an incomplete pass would bring this game to a close as Drew Brees and the Saints failed to complete the comeback as the Buccaneers held on in a crazy one that saw all kinds of turnovers and mishaps. But Jameis Winston gets his first win as an NFL starter, and the Bucks are now 1-1, and the Saints fall to 0-2. And at 0-2, the Saints are in trouble, as we know only 12% of teams that start 0-2 end up making the playoffs, and the South is wide open. But the Bucks right here getting a win in division against their rival on the road. That's going to go a long way towards them making a run in the South. Although they did start off with a rough week in week 1, they bounced back here in week 2 with a big performance all around on both sides of the ball as they got things done in New Orleans. And this is the 6th straight loss for the Saints at home going back to last year. Previously, the year before that, they had been unbeaten in New Orleans, and thought maybe this year New Orleans would go back to being the team that they were in 2013, at least at home. But instead, we see here, at least early on, they're looking more like the team that they were last year, as they seem to have picked up right where they left off, continuing that home losing streak for the Saints. But the Bucks, like I said, the first win of the Jameis Winston era. And Jameis Winston was 14 of 21. He had 207 passing yards in this game. He also had a touchdown. Drew Brees was 24 for 38. He had 255 passing yards in the game, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. And on the ground, muscle hamster Doug Martin, 21 carries for 78 yards. He also had 2 receptions for 20 yards. Mark Ingram had 16 carries for 53 yards for the Saints. He also had a touchdown on the ground. He had 3 receptions for 5 yards as well. And through the air, Murphy had 3 receptions for 82 yards for the Bucks. Vincent Jackson, 3 receptions for 54 yards and a touchdown. Austin Seraphim-Jenkins had 2 receptions for 29 yards. And for the Saints, Marquise Colston, 4 receptions for 69 yards. Brandon Cooks, 5 receptions for 62 yards. Willie Snead, 4 receptions for 44 yards and a touchdown. And Coleman had 3 receptions for 33 yards. They were having troubles keeping the ball. As I said, they had those fumbles. They lost the pairs. Ingram and Snead each lost a fumble. Brees had a couple of fumbles as well. He did recover one of them, though. And they also had that interception as well. We look at the defense. Conti had 5 tackles for the Bucks. Alexander, David, and Jennings and McDonald each had 4 tackles. Jaquez Smith, 3 sacks. He had 2 on one drive there at the end as he came up clutch down the stretch. Conti also had an interception and a forced fumble. And Smith, along with his 3 sacks, he had 2 forced fumbles in this game. Gerald McCoy had a sack as well, and Moore had a forced fumble for the Bucks. And for the Saints, Vaccaro led the team in tackles with 6 tackles. In Kika, I'm definitely saying his name wrong, but you know what I'm talking about. He had a forced fumble. He also had a sack. Edabali had a sack as well. Jordan had a sack. And Williams had a forced fumble, all for the Saints. And we look at the team stats. And for the Saints, they had 21 first downs. The Bucks just 18 first downs. And on third downs, the Saints converted 7 of 14. That's 50%. The Bucks just 5 of 14 for 35%. The Saints were 1 for 1 on fourth downs. We look at total net yards. The Bucks netted 333. The Saints 323. On the ground, the Bucks netted 139, and the Saints netted 104. And through the air, the Saints netted 219, the Bucks 194. And we look at third downs. Actually, we already looked at third downs. On red zone efficiency, the Bucks were 2 for 5, just 40% in the red zone, as they were struggling to get the ball in the end zone when they were in the red zone. And then we look at the Saints, they were 100%, 3 for 3, as they were having success in the red zone. But those costly turnovers, the time of possession was in the Saints' favor, 31 minutes and 28 seconds versus 28 minutes and 32 seconds for the Bucks. But the Bucks were in control of this game early on, as they were leading this one 23 to just 7 at one point. Of course, the Saints turned it on in the fourth quarter, but it was too little too late. As Brees, he did get him down there. He got him in the end zone, but at that point, it was kind of garbage time. But they still made it interesting. Of course, a lot of that was the turnovers of the Saints. Those costly fumbles and the interception. They all seem to happen at the worst times. If you were the Saints, for the worst. But if you're the Bucks, they happen at the best times. So the defense coming up clutch for Tampa Bay, forcing those turnovers, and they got them when they needed to, right when the Saints looked like they might actually make something happen. And even still down the stretch, the Saints actually had a chance to tie this game and possibly send it into overtime, but the Bucks came up big, were able to force the incompletions at the end of the game. Like I said, they came up pretty clutch throughout the game, especially on defense. They stepped it up. They allowed 42 points to the Titans in week 1, but they bounced back, allowing only 19 points to the Saints here in New Orleans. So, very impressive performance by Jameis Winston as well. And he got his first win, and he's looking a lot better here in week 2. And even he didn't really look that bad in week 1. They just got down early. But here they were able to get up early, and they were able to ride that out for the rest of the game. Like I said, their defense made big plays when they needed to. And so the Buccaneers are now 1-1, and the Saints are 0-2. So it's not looking too good in New Orleans, and things are looking up in Tampa after a weak start. But they have a strong performance on the road, and we'll see where they go moving forward. But things do look promising for the Buccaneers. But let me know what you think in the comments section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for listening. It's greatly appreciated. I hope you're having a good day and had a great weekend, and enjoy all the sports.